I'm Evan DeWald, and I am joined by Tara Lindsley, and we are the voices behind the Unpacked podcast. On the Unpacked podcast, one of the things we love to do is talk about life and storytelling, and sometimes life gets messy and vulnerable and all those things. So we have conversations with counselors, with psychologists, with industry leaders, storytellers, and just regular humans that are making a difference in the world.
Yeah, and we're just hoping to grow and reflect and heal together. So you can find our podcast anywhere you subscribe to your podcasts. New episodes come out every Thursday. Enjoy.
Make sure to like and subscribe.
See you there. Hey, Tara.
Hey.
How are you today?
Good. That was really
Was that
cheery.
exciting?
Yeah.
We had a good conversation just a couple of minutes ago. I get fired up when I meet new people.
I know. It's so fun. Pre-interviews are actually really fun.
They are. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I did actually have a slip up because I did say, well, a pre-interview is to find out if you're weird or not, you know. It seemed like everybody except me was uncomfortable with me saying that. So.
We don't like to tell everyone when we're screening them based on that.
Is that not seriously what you're doing? You just all I need is a quick glance, a couple of words, you find out the weird factor, and then you go for it.
The nice way of putting it is seeing if we're a fit.
Oh, yes, if we're a fit. And what did you say? Oh, and also what questions we want to ask during the interview.
Yeah, you don't pay attention to that, but I do.
No, just looking for the weird factor. But you see, here's the thing. Just because you're weird doesn't mean you wouldn't get on.
Well, that's true. That is true.
Yeah, because I kind of like weird people.
I know, they are fascinating.
I am kind of a weird people. You know, so.
I didn't want to point it out. But.
That's right. How was your weekend?
It was good. It was fun.
It was a good weekend.
Yeah, we got to record our holiday episode.
Oh, man, that was fun.
Yeah, with our friends.
Cranberry.
Moscow mules. Maybe I should share the recipe.
That'll get you talking. Wow.
Well, that was the point that we came up with was, some cocktails to help people.
I'm looking forward to that episode. It's coming up in a week or two.
Yeah, just before Christmas.
Oh, man, it's good. It was fun. Just get your friends together, and instead of just you and I telling Christmas stories, we decided, hey, let's include some people.
Yeah, and we told awkward and funny stories too. So
yeah,
it's entertaining.
Good laugh.
Yeah.
It's really good. Also, both our boys were playing soccer on the weekend.
Yeah, at the same time, we keep wanting to watch Otto, and we can't.
No, same.
Yeah.
We all love to watch the mayhem unfold with Theo.
3-year-old soccer. It's amazing. Soccer. There's no actual games, just drills.
It's just running around.
Yeah, it's good.
Otto had an epic game.
Yeah, how?
Yeah, probably the game of his career so far.
His career.
Yeah.
How so?
Well, this is the big story is 2 weeks ago. They played these guys in a eval kind of a game. Just the season hadn't started.
Okay.
And he got his butt kicked. They lost 8-1.
Ooh.
And Otto got kicked around quite a bit. He got knocked down, pushed down, all kinds of stuff. It was a rough soccer game. He comes home. And we're talking about, I'm like, what do you think? What are you going to, you're playing these guys the first game of the season. And he's like, I got to get stronger. I got to get bigger. I got to get stronger. 2 weeks, he's been lifting weights, working out in the basement.
Yeah.
Exercising, running. He's watching soccer, figuring out all the things. Anyways, had a meeting with his coach.
Wow.
About some stuff. Anyways, he showed up on Saturday ready to go.
I bet that is a mindset shift.
It was super fun. I was fired up. I was definitely the loudest parent in the building, and there was multiple fields up there.
Oh,
didn't matter funny. What field you were on, that there was a kid named Otto playing at the northeast corner. Anyways, they came up with a tie.
Oh,
but
exciting though.
Oh man, it was a great game. Super fun.
Oh, we need to come watch. Theo really wants to watch him.
Yeah, he's getting just better and better. It's really fun to watch. Hey, we're doing a little enneagram here again.
Yeah.
Defensive patterns on the enneagram this week. One of the kind of cool things about the enneagram is it just, and we've said this, I know I've said it many, many times, multiple layers to this tool. And it's a self-awareness tool. It's used for growth. It's used for basically learning how you see and what your kind of core motivations are. So your core motivations contribute to how you see, how you understand the world, and then how you act, what you do with that. And so there's all this kind of unique ways of kind of understanding health and how do you get better? How do you see challenges, problems, things in your story, all that kind of stuff. And so defensive mechanism or defensive strategies are really the way that your ego has come up with protecting itself. So, but the more that you can become self-aware, the more that you can identify the places where you are trying to protect yourself. And the reality is that in some of our stories and some of the, the wiki stories, the small stories inside, we don't actually need to protect ourselves. Our ego is just taken over in a lot of ways to the point where now we're actually using defensive patterns and defensive strategies to defend nothing. Patterns of each of the types.
Yeah. And so we go through all the types.
Yeah. And so essentially it's like, if you were to think about it, you should, a good way of doing this would be to be asking yourself this question, like, what am I trying to protect? Because if you're trying to protect something, you're going to defend it. So there are moments when we do actually want to turn down some of these kinds of things that we've become accustomed to using on a regular basis. So being self-aware enough to see your defensive strategy or your defensive pattern can be really, really helpful. So big question, what are you trying to avoid or protect? Right? Then you're kicking into it. And each type has kind of a typical thing they do.
Right. But you could have more than one.
Yeah, you can have more than one for sure. Just like you have, we're not just one type.
Right.
You've got parts of all these other types in you, right? And so, but you do have a dominant type, right?
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of defensive patterns, and we're going to obviously get into the whole episode. It should be fun.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Enneagram one more time.
I think there'll be more.
Oh, wait, before we do that.
What?
We've got something out right now, don't we?
Oh, yeah. Our stances stuff.
Our stances stuff is out. People can sign up for the newsletter still.
Yeah. So until the end of day Thursday, if you sign up, you'll be drawn for 1 30-minute free session with you.
Yeah, that'll be awesome.
Yeah.
And you get the free stance
resource,
which is cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. You can have a little look on our website, and that's where you sign up.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds great. Hey, enjoy this episode on defensive strategies. Hey, Tara.
Hey.
I'm excited about today.
Me too.
Obviously, I say that every season.
Well, every episode.
Pretty much every episode, because we get to talk to people.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Except not you and me today. It's just us.
Just us.
I like talking to you. It's fun.
Yeah, well, and about our favorite topic.
Yeah, the enneagram. Yeah, this sucker is really kind of taking over, isn't it?
The sucker. Yeah, well, someone got their coaching and now it's all we can talk about.
That's right. Yeah, I'm really excited about the enneagram because I see it as a tool for growth. And in the last few months, as I've been doing coaching and doing a bunch of things, I just realizing how much I love helping people grow.
Yeah. Well, you've always been really passionate about that, but seeing it in a different way is pretty fun.
It's funny because I've always been excited about seeing people grow. I just seem like I'm more paying attention to it more right now. Anyway, today we talk about defensive strategies.
Yeah, which is something neither of us really knew a lot about.
Yeah, you know what? It's a funny thing because it doesn't get talked about very often, but it really is the process of making the unconscious things you do conscious.
Seems kind of important then for us, for people not talking about it a lot. Even when I was searching to find some notes and to gather some stuff for us, I was like, I don't think there's a lot out there on this.
I don't know why that is, to be honest with you. But really, this is one of the ways that you catch yourself being yourself. And hopefully, as you become more aware of it, that you're doing it, then that's the space you grow in. Everybody has defensive strategies. Nobody gets away from them.
That's true. Before we get into that, do you want to just really briefly tell us like what the Enneagram is and how much you need to know for today?
You don't need to know that much for today. If you know your number, that's great. Or your type, that's great. But honestly, sometimes you can even like identify your type just by looking deeper into the defensive strategies.
Yeah. And we all kind of have all of the defensive strategy. Like you can use different ones, but commonly there's some associated with the types.
Exactly. Yep. So there's 9 types on the Enneagram. They're primarily motivation oriented. So what it is that motivates you. So it's less behavior and more core motivation. We could go through all the numbers, which we've done on other episodes, so we're not going to do that today. But really, this is about like, how am I loved? How do I protect myself? What does that look like? And every human has developed a strategy for doing those kinds of things. So when I talk about it with other people, it's like we find a type by everybody wants to be loved, and we figured out a way that we'll be loved. And it works for us. For the most part, it works for us. It may not be working for all those around us, but it works for us. And the more that we can become aware of it, because you're typically just growing then in that one vein.
Right.
But as you become more aware of that you're in one vein or one train of thinking or seeing the world, you get a chance to expand that out and grow a little bit.
And it can be helpful at home and at work.
Yes. That's one of the great things about the Enneagram. And I've been saying that in some of my corporate training stuff is that, hey, if you're a business owner, you get to invest in your employees. They'll become more productive at work. You'll probably have a healthier environment, some common language, all those kind of things are going to happen. But you're also gifting every one of your employees when they go home and have healthier relationships, not only with their spouses or their kids, but their friendships, the other passion projects that they're working on, all of those things. So in a way, you really do bless your employee in all areas of their life by investing in Enneagram training.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
The other thing is we have a whole playlist on Spotify of Enneagram episodes.
Yeah. So if you want to listen to Unpacked and you want to just hear some of the specifics to the Enneagram, you can go on there and look up that playlist.
Yeah. And then we'll link your coaching stuff in there too.
Awesome.
Defense patterns.
So yeah, defensive patterns are good.
They are. They don't sound good.
They don't sound, because everybody's worried about being defensive.
Yeah.
But really maybe it's helpful to just see how they're rooted or what they're rooted in. So the first thing is that it's like your body was designed to protect itself, and your ego has operated and figured out how it wants to operate. So in a way, your defensive strategy is really protecting your ego, which isn't always a good thing. It's really just you trying to protect yourself, and you do it unconsciously. And that's one of the tricks in self-work in the Enneagram, is that it's like you can come to coaching and I can tell you your defensive strategy or all patterns or all those different things. But if you can't slow down enough in the present moment to kind of catch yourself being yourself, you don't grow. You might have the information, and like we've talked about in other episodes, you can grow in there, but you won't experience transformation until you're able to actually identify those things playing out in your real life. And it sucks. Like, I don't know how else to say it. It sucks.
Yeah, it sounds really hard.
It's very hard work.
And it's not something you can really change.
No.
Like, you can't just stop doing it.
You can't stop doing it, but you can catch yourself doing it. And I think that's the growth that takes place. So as we even name some of these defensive patterns and some of those things, it's helpful to understand and know what yours are in relation to your type and what they might look like. So hopefully we'll do some examples like that. Did I miss anything in this intro?
I was just going to see if there's anything more about, we were just going to talk about like, it's your survival instinct.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the way you survive, the way you stay alive. Except we're not all we're not always physically in danger anymore, right?
Right. And you can learn this as a child.
You do. Well, you do learn this as a child.
Right. Okay.
And that's the trick, right? Is you learn it in the context of a child, and then you grow up, right? And that's part of the challenge, is that you grow up with that childish perspective or defensive pattern.
Right. And if you're not aware to it, then you actually can't learn any other coping strategies because you're always in this one.
It's the tool it's the most used tool in the toolbox, so to speak. But if you do any sort of even home repair or odd jobs, it takes a lot of tools to build something or to make something or to fix something.
Yeah. I was telling my husband this the other day, where I was like, also, I think we get to different points in our life where like the tools were working for us and then they're not anymore.
Yeah.
And you need something new.
Things change and experiences change. Your story changes. Even the challenges changes. You and Ryan got a new little guy running around. Well, he's not new anymore, but you got a little guy running around, and he changes what happens in your home from 3 years ago.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like you can have really good coping strategies and still like you grow out of them.
If you're the kind of person that's committed to growth too, this is just another area to grow in.
It doesn't have to be scary, even though defensive, patterns are.
Well, it sounds so scary, but really, if you see it more like it's like a freedom to move into the next stage. It's really actually about getting out of the box you're in.
Yeah. And the Enneagram just is revealing, like, this isn't the right way to say this, but your personality, you're stuck in your personality.
Yeah.
So you can be free from the personality and be living more authentically.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've developed strategies. That's just how it is.
Yeah. So you were saying earlier, self-compassion is really important
Oh,
in this.
man. Because sometimes, unfortunately, while you're learning this, you don't usually catch yourself in the moment.
No.
You catch yourself like an hour after the moment.
Yeah.
When you're stewing and brewing or ruminating on something that's like, when you realize, that might be me.
Yeah.
I've never had that happen, but I heard it happens to other people.
You've heard. Or it's like later that night when you're going to bed and you're like, oh, uh-oh.
Yeah. Did I actually just rationalize my behavior?
Yep. I might be mad. That's what happens to me. Oh, I might be actually upset. And then you're stuck.
Yeah.
So knowing the way out of that is actually really freeing. And we're not talking, defensive sounds like fighting too. And we're not talking about that.
No, it's protection.
Right. Okay. So like when you're identifying your defensive patterns, what does that look like? Like, can you have more than one? What do you need to know about that?
Yeah, I think you definitely can have more than one, but you do have a dominant one.
Okay.
In Enneagram language, we always talk about it that way. So you may have a type, for example, I'm a type 7, but really another way of wording it is I'm dominant in type 7.
Like we do with the instincts.
Yes, I have like other numbers that are present. I'm still Evan with multiple experiences. And if I did an actual online test, which I don't really advocate for anymore, but if you actually got a percentage score, yeah, you're going to have some numbers where you're just more dominant in than others, if that makes sense. So in a way, that's similar to this.
And we're going to go through all the numbers in a minute, but you had some questions that you learned in your course that were helpful that I thought we could talk about.
Yeah, I think that one of the key questions I would ask and have asked is, what is it that you're trying to avoid? If you ask if you were to ask yourself even right now, what is it that I'm trying to avoid? It will help. In particular, actually, maybe right now, because you're in a state of hopefully, absolute bliss because you're hanging out with your best friend. We're chilling here talking Enneagram, right? Doing your favorite thing.
Yeah.
But if maybe you get in some attention, or there's attention, then there is something that you are trying to typically avoid. And that's a good question to kind of ask yourself. So some people avoid things differently, right? So real quick, yeah, I avoid my pain by rationalization. I try to intellectualize it into something until it's less painful. I don't have to think about the feelings about it. That's as simple as that.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, we can go through each of them and talk a little bit more about that. I was going to say though, too, if you don't start paying attention to your defense mechanisms or defensive patterns, what could happen? Like, do we have some examples? Like at work, how could it play out? Or at home, how does it play out? You kind of gave an example of like, if you're avoiding pain, but like, can we take it further? What are examples of places that if you don't ever look at this, what happens?
Well, I think you become you're an unaware person, for starters. I think that people are aware of some of these things. We're just giving it some different language.
Okay.
If that makes sense. But if you're in an office and you are just constantly, disaster happens all around you and you've never actually entertained the possibility that it might be you, then that is going to be one of the challenges that you face. And that's what self-awareness work is about. It's about identifying the things and the behaviors and motivations that we have that are unconscious, and we make them conscious. So every number has a thing they're avoiding. They have a defensive mechanism, if you see it that way. And of course, they're working towards an idealization, like the perfect outcome. And they think that it will work. So are we going to do some of these numbers?
Yeah, let's go through them.
Yeah, so as we get ready, just keep this in mind. What are you trying to avoid? We'll try to name it. What is your defensive mechanism? And of course, that's because you're working towards what you assume is the ideal situation.
Right.
Or ideal feeling, sense, whatever. Should we start with the 8?
Yeah.
And we do that, right? Because 8s, 1s, and 9s are in the body triad. And then 2s, 3s, and 4s are in the heart. and 5, 6s, and 7s are in the head. Okay, so we'll end with a 7.
Always, every time.
Gotta wait every time. It's how they keep our attention.
Oh, smart.
Yeah, otherwise the monkey mind of the 7's like.
Well, and it is good to listen. Like we've said this on other ones. It is good to listen to all the types. Like learn about all the types so you can have compassion for them, but also you're probably interacting with them.
You absolutely are.
At work or at home. So.
Yeah. Also, we want to get the 9s in near the beginning.
Yeah, because
they're only listening to about 20% of the conversation. So
yeah.
If we don't hit them at the beginning, the first part, we've probably lost all the 9s already.
We've probably lost them already. Or they'll maybe catch a little bit. They'll perk up when we talk about their number. But sometimes all my husband says to me is, Tara, a third.
Yeah.
That's
a third.
it.
That's
he's
all.
like,
I didn't
that's
hear
all I
anything
got.
you said after. So he's not listening anymore right now anyway.
He's gone. Well, he never listens to us. But
he has to hear us regurgitate it afterwards.
Yeah, and before, and you know, all of it.
Okay.
Yeah. From both of us, because we don't always hang out together. Poor
yes,
guy.
and he has to hear it twice. He was over the other night and ended up having to hear my whole enneagram spiel on something else. Poor guy.
Oh, no, he wants just to be peaceful and left alone, and we're like both talking at him all the time.
No, he absolutely had a lot to contribute, actually.
Really?
Yes.
You're gonna
He's
make me
actually
jealous.
quite smart.
I totally believe
Very
that.
wise guy.
Why do you think I want to talk to him all the time?
That's right. Me too. All right, the 8. Let's do it. All right. So you got to think, what is the 8 trying to avoid? Well, it's vulnerability and weakness. Typically always trying to avoid that. So the mechanism that they do that with is denial. They're essentially redirecting their energy away from the softer emotions towards more instinctual energy. So they want to deny the weakness, deny the vulnerability, divide anything actually that appears to them to be soft.
Yeah, or could reveal in them something.
Exactly. So for 8s, they're denying vulnerability and weakness, and that allows them to feel strong. It helps them to take on any challenge that might come their way. Remember, the 8s have a lot of energy for challenge, right? All those kind of things. Emotion, in particular, the more challenging emotions like sadness and some of those things, they take away from that energy, and they feel like they need it to keep up the strong thing and to take on the next challenge.
And they would probably use control.
Yeah, exactly. They would use control, and they would try to demonstrate, that they're superhuman, that they're invulnerable, that they have all those things. So they're really denying this part of themselves that's actually quite soft and tender.
And can be useful. Like it is healthy and helpful.
One of the things that's really difficult for me or irritating for me is because 8s would like you to see that they're solid and strong and all those kind of things, but they really are actually quite sensitive. 8s get their feelings hurt.
Yeah, you just don't always notice that. People don't always notice that.
Yeah, and if you're just watching the memes, you do not recognize that an 8 is a whole human who has feelings and vulnerabilities and all of those things. They're just working to deny them.
Yeah. One of the things that came to mind when we talk about 8s, I was telling someone the other day that we went to this lawn bowling tournament, and we happened to have a little sneaky heads up on some of the numbers in the room because you had done some coaching with them and you knew their enneagram numbers, which really helped with my anxiety and social anxiety in particular. But you were like, oh, this person's an 8, and he was teaching us how to lawn bowl. And one of the things that I found myself saying about 8s is like, oh, if you just like, if someone's talking to you kind of aggressively, you can just kind of assume that that's the way they're talking, and it doesn't mean it has anything personal. Yeah. But when you told me he was an 8, I was like, oh, great. I know how to hear this now. Yeah. When he's correcting me or when he's telling me how to do this. Yeah. In the most loving way. Absolutely. So I don't hear it the same way if I can just change my brain a little bit to be like, oh, it's going to sound aggressive. Well, and remember, one of the gifts of the 8 is not just denying weakness in themselves or vulnerability in themselves, but they are often trying to challenge you to make you be stronger. Right. Especially if they love you. Yeah. They challenge you a lot. And it really is them trying to serve you. It's them trying to help you be strong. That's their ideal person. Their ideal person is that they're strong and powerful. Right. And those kinds of things. That's the idealization. Mm-hmm. So there you have it. Yeah. Okay. You got what are they avoiding? Right? Which is vulnerability and weakness. They're using the process of denial. And it's primarily denial of their own interior
emotions, which are the softer emotions. And because their idealization is that they're strong and that they're powerful. There you go.
8s, done.
Nines? Oh man. So the nines, the nines are interesting. So nines are typically trying to avoid conflict, separation, and let's just say an unsettledness in the force. So change it's hard for nines to do change. Okay. And so when these kinds of things happen, the change in plans, all those kind of things, or potential conflict, or, lack of peace, lack of comfort, all those kind of things, they use a process called narcalization.
Okay.
In other words, an activity or a mindset of falling asleep to. And you can fall asleep. This process or technique is a way that they're protecting themselves. So they'll fall asleep using all kinds of things. So it can be food, it can be drink, it can be entertainment, it can be thinking. Hey, guess what, folks? For nines, they can do that process through overworking. Yeah. Anything else that will help them to fall asleep to what's going on here. So it's important to keep that in mind. So the avoidance, they're avoiding conflict. They're avoiding that separation, that disturbance in the force. Their idealization then is that there I am peaceful. I'm harmonious. I'm, at one with the force. There's not a disruption in the force. I'm at one with the force. And that's what they're working towards. That's the idealization.
And is their idea that if they separate themselves enough from it, they don't feel it?
That they won't feel it.
So they can keep their peace.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that they won't cause it.
Right.
They don't like to cause a disruption in the force. And what's sad about this, and we didn't say this at the beginning, but often when we don't pay attention to these things, that is exactly what comes. So when a 9, when they fall asleep to the potential conflict that's coming, guess what? It comes, and it comes even stronger. Something to think about.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right. Should we do the 1?
Yeah.
All right. So the 1 is essentially doing what we would call, actually, first of all, the avoidance for a 1 is being wrong or making a mistake or expressing the anger that they actually are feeling.
Yeah.
Towards something. Okay. So even at one of the typing questions that I ask is often, how hard do you work to make sure something isn't your fault?
Oh, that's an interesting question.
Yeah. What's driving you? Okay. So if you think about that, for a 1, they're the perfectionists on the wheel. They really would like to do things the right way or the good way. And so they're ironically or interestingly enough are doing this reaction formation. In other words, that the reaction to everything that happens should be done perfectly. So they feel one thing and they do another.
Yeah, that's tricky.
Feel angry, but they don't want to express that anger to anyone. So they're doing the other. So they can actually work harder and become nicer. And while they're working harder and becoming nicer, they're actually getting angrier.
Yeah, that makes sense because you're denying a part of you. That's not the right word for it, but you are
they're
trying to
forming the reaction that they believe they should have, even though it's not truthful, which they would hate to hear.
Yeah, that would be really uncomfortable to hear.
Yep. I've had ones, I even had a 1 yesterday tell me that they can't let things go. They know that it's the right thing to let it go. And so they did all the things to let it go and said all the words. They're still angry.
So what do they have to do to help let it go?
They have to pay attention to this exact thing.
That as they work harder and get nicer, that they actually have to probably name their anger.
Yes. Exactly.
And their frustration.
And be okay with it being messy, which is extremely difficult for a 1. Ones love to make order out of chaos. They do not like to be the cause of chaos. But remember, just like we said with the 9 and avoiding it, sometimes you create it, right? So if you perfectly format all of your responses, but you don't tell the truth, then what happens in the bigger picture of as things start to implode? They get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Well, and then no one ever really knows you.
So if you're always working towards the good thing, you don't always do the right thing.
Yeah.
Which is to express your actual feelings and your actual emotions. Okay? Remember, the avoidance is they're trying to avoid being wrong, making mistakes, anger, those kinds of things. And they're doing it because the idealization that they have is that they're right, that they're good. If they would just trust that, they would typically have the right and good response and answer.
Because they actually
typically know.
Yeah, I was just going to say that is the gift they have. They typically can see the actual like moral right way,
Yeah.
the fair way
Yeah.
to go about things.
Exactly.
And they know how to make structure and order really well. Like they do have that giftedness, but
We have a mutual friend who's a 1.
oh yeah.
And, yeah. Takes a while to formulate her response.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Isn't that
That's a good
interesting?
point. Yeah.
And that's what she's trying to do, is formulate the right response.
Yeah. And also when she suggests a way forward, it's often the right way forward.
It is often the right way. And she's pretty
Aware.
healthy.
Yeah.
Healthy one.
We're going to
right?
have her on the
So
podcast.
We are. Woohoo! We won't say who it is.
It's a big surprise.
People got to keep listening.
I don't remember what order this will be in, but hopefully this will come out before.
There you go. All right. Take 2s.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel like you should do this one.
Oh, yeah, for sure I should. It's repression. That's the biggest thing about the 2s. That's our defense mechanism. So we're trying to avoid having our own needs and the risk of rejection.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not fun. So you actually just repress your needs and your feelings in order to continue being needed and wanted and
Helpful.
Yeah, and helpful. And I can look off the notes, but I'll just like talk from my experience really quickly that it's actually a desire to stay connected with other people. And it's not a very quickly can I repress my needs if someone requests something from me and I had planned on doing something else or had decided I was going to say something else, and it can very quickly derail me and I don't even know I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And it's almost like putting on a new personality to make myself more likable to the people I'm close with. And often it's really in the case of the people I'm closest with that I want to, I'll repress my needs more quickly.
And this is one of those important things and why we talk about self-compassion being so important with enneagram work and growth work, right? It's because you're going to catch yourself. Like, oh man, I just set myself aside. Even when others didn't invite you to turn your volume down, you turned it down.
Yeah.
For some 2s, they even report like somebody had asked them to turn themselves down, but they just felt like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Nobody's telling me to do that by any means. I haven't felt that. I think sometimes you could assume that there's a perception that you should do that. The shoulds can come into play. Often you're trying to turn down the volume on like the negative emotions, like whatever you consider negative emotions. For me, it's anger. I'm okay to be sad for the most part, but I'd prefer to be like happy and having fun.
Yeah. Hey, that's
right. Way better.
As your friend, I would definitely say though, I'm completely okay with handling whichever ones you come here with. Right. And I think that's what all of your loved ones would want you to know.
Right. Yeah.
It's just like the loved ones of a 9 would want them to be awake and not doing numbing behavior. Right. The loved ones of an 8 they aren't actually asking them to turn themselves down.
Yeah, to deny their vulnerability. They want to see that.
They want to see that vulnerability. And the same thing with the 1, right? So it's like your loved ones really actually do want the best for you. And they want you to lean into those things that you're trying to avoid.
Yeah.
They want you to grow.
I heard on a podcast a long time ago, this is how I became really aware of it. They were giving an example of when you get a phone call out of the blue or, a text or whatever, and someone asks you to do something. And as a 2, you feel the tension to want to help. And also it wasn't what you were planning on doing. So you almost, if you're paying enough attention, I feel it in my body that there's a conflict, but I sometimes can't name it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I can tell it's like, oh, I wanted to say no to that and I didn't.
Yeah. You gave into it.
Mm-hmm. Or I put what I was going to do aside to help someone else.
Yeah, I was just, I did a reel on this, I'm doing the social media thing.
Can't imagine who makes you do that.
And it is interesting because somebody I was talking to was just saying, yeah, they're in a relationship with somebody who's constantly wanting to meet everybody else's needs. And he just simply said to her, he's like, not everybody needs you to meet their needs. They need your attention. And that's all. Like, I'm an attention hound. That's all I want is everybody's attention. But for real, if you just think about that, it's like not every time somebody asks you to, or you identify a need that needs to be met, does that actually have to like turn into an actual action you're doing? It really could be just attention. They just want your attention.
Yeah, actually, that's been a good practice for me too, is to wait for people to ask for my help. And when someone is that, I try not to offer a lot of advice. I actually just try to be in it.
Yeah. Yeah. You're good at it too.
Well, thanks.
Okay. So there we go. Like, quick sum up: avoiding needs and avoiding rejection. The mechanism is repression. So you just repress all your own needs. Those, you don't say what those things are. And the idealization is that I am helpful. You want to be helpful. And I say you twos
Want to be helpful.
have a desire to be helpful. Okay, on to the 3.
Yeah.
Identification.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
Yeah. So first of all, I would want you to say, so remember this. 3s are avoiding failure or disapproval. That's kind of what they're doing. So their defensive strategy is, or pattern is, identification. It's becoming the role, so much so that you lose contact with who you are. So I'm going to identify as the CEO. I'm going to identify as the most productive person in the office. I'm going to identify as the winner, as the whatever, the champion of all things that I put my hand to, right? Because that's how they find this value. It's like stepping into a second skin is a good example. In other words, I'm going to be what you need me to be so that I can win. Now this is those kinds of things where it's like they're very good at identifying what a room needs of them and how to achieve and win in that room. So it's not necessarily a bad thing until they become what they just stepped into. They become the role at work, and they lose themselves and who they are and what they really truly desire, right? So they're identifying with what other people, they're identifying with and becoming what other people want them to be. That doesn't mean that's what they want. And so unfortunately, in this kind of a setting, and in particular for 3s, I don't know how to say this gently, a lot of 3s fail, and when they fail big.
And that's how they grow.
Remember, this is exactly what I was talking about, right? It's like the very thing you are trying to avoid, and you use your defensive pattern to avoid that thing, it usually brings on the thing faster.
Right. Well, and I was thinking that too. There's probably something for every number.
Everyone.
That it brings or that it grows in you when you use that defensive pattern.
That's exactly it. So 3's got to be careful they don't become the role and lose themselves. Mm-hmm. That's the trick for them. Okay. So, and just keeping in mind, like, they'll do whatever it takes. They'll adapt their skills. They'll use charm. They'll use whatever to achieve those things. It'd be very, very difficult for 3s when you slow them down and ask them how they are doing.
Yeah, they don't like that very much.
No, not very much, right? Because it's asking the question that's underneath the role that they're showing you or they're playing right now.
And that they want to demonstrate to you.
Mm-hmm. If you love a 3 in your life or you work with a 3, it's really important actually to tell you how much you value them before they accomplish anything. You're really asking them to, like, actually, I really like you. I'd like you to turn yourself up.
Yeah.
So I can see it because I'm starting to see beauty in that. And that's one of those kind of ways that you can help them. So remember, just keeping in mind, it's like, so top, they're avoiding failure and disapproval. They do that by identifying as somebody else, right? They're being what they think the room needs them to be, or the business or whatever relationship wants them to be. And they're doing that because they want to show you that they're successful and that they're capable.
But by doing that, do they have a disconnect to themselves then?
Yeah. And I think that's why, burnout, crashing, those kinds of things often do happen to 3s, mm-hmm. because they have been working so hard outside of their own sense of being that they can become depleted. Like, you can only do that for so long.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And remember, like, we're talking about unaware numbers here, types. So a 3 can go, no, I can accomplish all of these things and not lose sight of who I am and what I want and how I believe I was made to be.
Yeah, it's not taking away from your talent or your skills by any means, but...
So the trick for them is to do that work before the crash.
Yeah.
Right? To have healthy relationships where competition isn't a part of that. Okay, so should we do the 4?
Yeah.
All right. So the 4s, just keep in mind their avoidance is or ordinary. They're trying to avoid being seen or experiencing being ordinary or inadequate. And they do that through introjection.
Yeah, that's a fancy word.
Yeah, and essentially it just means they're internalizing something that isn't really theirs, right? Or didn't belong to them in the first place. And by doing this, fours believe that they're in control of the criticism and the things that are happening inside and the relationship. So they'll internalize even something that's taking place in their life and story, and it had nothing to do with them.
But they internalize the pain.
Yeah. So something happens, and so they're working on a particular task. I know a four that this happened to, working on a particular task because that's their job. Their boss asked them to help out in another area. They got really upset because essentially, and they took it personally, but really it was like a big environment. Boss needed help to get this thing done, this job task done. Needed all hands on deck, so to speak. And they felt like, well, that wasn't treating them to the uniqueness of who they were. And or giving them the opportunity to succeed in both areas. And so that was a really challenging thing. So fours, in doing so, they take in criticism or any painful experiences, and they I don't like saying it like this, but I'm going to say it like this. In a way, they almost like pain. They like the struggle. They internalize the struggle. It makes them feel alive. And
it's a way to separate yourself from, it can be a strategy to separate yourself
exactly.
from it.
And fours are tricky to understand for me.
Yeah, I know.
Like it's been a challenge for me to figure out, well, why would you want that? Because I'm like, they will lean into and internalize, like we just said, some of these really painful and difficult things. And sometimes things aren't that painful, and they'll turn them into painful things, right? And so a part of that is just trying to demonstrate their uniqueness or how authentic they are. Yeah. That I'm feeling this so authentically, and it often looks like pain and struggle.
Yeah, it doesn't look great to people who want to just stay on the happy side of things.
Yeah, which is typically the tendency of the seven, which I am, right? So I look at it, I just go, I don't understand what you're trying to accomplish there. Why you would want to make yourself feel bad.
Yeah, but they have this like huge capacity to manage the painful emotions.
Yeah, and it is one of the ways that they grow into deep people, right?
That makes sense.
Internalizing these things is one of the ways that they grow in their depth.
Well, and they can sit with you in a lot of pain and not have, they don't see the need or feel the need to fix like I would. No. Like, I don't want you to be in pain. Yeah. I'll be in the pain with you, but I don't like it.
Yeah. Fours don't rush past pain.
Yeah.
So that's the four. Okay. Just keep it in mind. Fours avoidance. They don't want to be ordinary, and they don't want to be seen as inadequate. That's why envy is one of their things. They think they haven't been given what other people have been given. So they got to find it and feel it. Mm-hmm. So they internalize all these emotions, all these feelings. And it is a way in which they're trying to find it. Okay, fives. Yeah. Okay, so fives are trying to avoid incompetence or not knowing. Mm-hmm. And emptiness. Emptiness is another word that gets thrown in there. They're trying to avoid emptiness. And so they do this by detachment. Okay, so it can be physical, and it can be or emotionally withdrawing from others and even from their self.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. So they do a detaching behavior.
Kind of like the nines.
Yep. Yeah. And they're doing it to avoid anxiety, or being overwhelmed by feelings. For fives, feelings can often be very overwhelming.
Yeah, because they're in the thinking.
Yeah. And they really want to be very logical. And feelings are not logical in a lot of ways.
Right. They are information, though.
They're information. And I tell all fives that's been one of the most helpful things I ever learned, was that emotions are information. And almost every five goes,
right? It's a signal.
I got to learn the information. And it is kind of one of those, that was just a coaching tip everybody just got there. If you know a five, is that really that's ultimately what you're trying to do, is to help them see even the emotions or things that are happening inside of them that seem unpredictable as information. Okay, so fives, so in the detaching, it's like a way of protecting themselves from the difficult emotions, but also from needing support from other people. whether it's emotional or physical or whatever. Isolation leaves the 5 unable to feel the feelings at all, right? So if I'm not connected to very many people, then I won't have very many feelings about that. I detach. So if I detach from these loved ones, then I won't have to experience the ups and downs of emotions around them.
Well, and does it help them feel like they can make a logical decision then?
Yeah.
Or something thoughtful without their emotions involved? But often life doesn't really work that way.
Exactly.
Or your loved ones. You might be surrounded by people who are more emotional.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so if you detach from them, or you detach from the feelings that you feel around them, it's a way of protecting yourself. And that I just said this about good and bad.
That is interesting.
Yeah, because a 5 is concerned that they won't have what they need when a moment presents itself, and in particular, information. So they're concerned that they won't have the information they need to make the right choice. So they're detaching from, in a lot of ways, the emotion, so that they can gather the information. That's why they're called the observer. They come into a group, they typically lean back, they withdraw, and they're watching and observing and learning the environment that they're in.
So then they can contribute?
Yeah, if they can get there.
Yeah, but not always.
Yeah, not always.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually had a 5 describe to me that, like, being in a conversation with 2 other people, so 3 people in the conversation, is very, very difficult for him. Because he watches the conversation taking place. He detaches from it so that he can observe what's happening. And he watches these 2 people have a conversation, and then doesn't know exactly how to reattach into the conversation because he's been detached from it.
Yeah, that would be a challenge.
And then at some point, he comes to the space where he goes, this is taking too much of my energy and I want to leave. So then there's an awkwardness that's taking place there. When they're healthy and they come into those conversations and they recognize that they probably have all the information they need to have a conversation, then they can contribute right off the bat. An unhealthy 5 will withdraw and withhold information. When a 5 recognizes themselves as the person with information and shares it and is generous with it, they experience a great deal of healthier relationships all around. So again, I should probably just recap this. The avoidance is that they don't want to be seen as incompetent or not knowing and or feel emptiness. And it's not just be seen. Actually, I shouldn't say be seen as incompetent. They don't want to be incompetent.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with their appearance of being incompetent.
Period.
It's like, I don't want to be incompetent. So the mechanism is to detach from all the things that they don't know that much about, emotions being key in that, but also in other areas. Yeah. And when they do come in, oftentimes they will find themselves coming in with intellectual information that they don't always know how to deliver. And if we can hang on to it and just wait it out, you get to hear some of the most beautiful explained and described things. 5s have an immense amount of wisdom. Yeah. 6.
Yeah. So
the 6's avoidance is rejection, uncertainty, and unpredictability. All right. So they're trying to avoid those 3 things. They don't want to be rejected. That's why they're called a loyalist often. They want to be so loyal so no one will reject them. And same thing, they're trying to minimize the uncertainty in life and unpredictability of life and what could come with that. So they do that by projection. And so it is a way of kind of attributing to others what they can't accept in themselves. So they by taking something that belongs to you, like a feeling, a thought, or a sensation, and projecting it into or onto someone else. Right? This allows the 6 to escape the blame or threat that they are feeling. Just remember that a 6 always, in some way, feels like they're under threat. Like healthy 6s have figured out a lot of those kind of things, but ultimately that's what they're feeling. Their attention is going towards, well, what are the dangers? What are the uncertainties? What's the threat? Right. And oftentimes they feel that threat internally and then they put it on you.
Like tell you about the threat, but then also tell you how to fix the threat.
You should feel under threat. That's the 2 or 7 or whatever. Why aren't you being more attentive to how unpredictable this situation is or how uncertain this is, how dangerous it is? So they are projecting their fear of what could happen onto those around them. It can be physical, it can be emotional, it can be all those things.
I was even thinking at work too, like how that plays out at work is like if they have a concern about something, they want it to go well and they want it to they want to actually help fix it. They want it to be protected. They want it to be done well, but it's going to come across like everybody should be as fearful, and they can kind of change the dynamic in the room by doing that.
Yeah. And it is one of those kind of things, right? Where they are really trying to do their best to keep everybody safe. So you got to see that.
Yeah.
This isn't about them trying to be a killjoy or trying to tell you about all the scary things and why you shouldn't do something. It's really more like going, there are dangers here. So we need to think about how we can minimize those dangers. In a healthy six, especially, that's the case. They're not trying to scare you all the time, but they are projecting their fears upon you at times.
And it doesn't come across like it's just their fears. Like that's the thing that's a bit confusing is the projection is a bit tricky.
And sometimes a six will say, yeah, well, this is what everybody is afraid of. It's like, okay, who is everybody in that sentence? Sometimes even gone out looking.
To bring people around it. Yeah, interesting.
By projecting out their fear on others, they can make people afraid. Yeah. Remember, they're just as afraid of rejection as they are of uncertainty. So they are working to be loyal, to be faithful, and to be connected. All those kinds of things. It just plays out so differently in the way that they try to keep you safe.
But yeah, there's a lot of commonalities between a lot of the different defense mechanisms that people are using.
So just keeping in mind, avoidance, rejection, uncertainty, right? Unpredictability. The mechanism is to project, put it on other things, other people, even other organizations, all those kinds of things. And all in an effort to demonstrate how that they are loyal.
Yeah, which they are.
They are loyal. It's not just a fake. This is just like the 5, right? It's like, no, the 5 wants to know. The 6 is loyal.
And they are worrying about the group.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Especially depending on their instinct, which is a whole different podcast.
We have one on that.
Oh man, we're just about there.
It's you.
We're at the 7. Okay, so the 7's avoidance is pain, suffering, and limitation.
Suffering.
Yeah. Well, what's the word? I don't know. Like sorrow. Oh my gosh, we talk about sorrow. Just try to read bonkers. That's like the worst case of suffering is sorrow.
Yeah. Oh.
But I can do it. I can actually do it. So the defensive mechanism, though, that 7s use is rationalization. They explain away or they justify it as a way of avoiding feelings, and or taking responsibility for their behavior. You probably have never seen me do that.
No.
Right?
It happens so fast.
It does happen really fast, like so fast that sometimes I can even convince people that I'm right.
Yeah.
But really, I think when I find myself or catch myself doing that, the moment is where I have to go, I'm trying to convince myself that I'm right. So I don't have to experience this thing. Yeah. I have a very quick mind of rationalizing out why I would do what I did or why I would believe what I do or whatever. It's all mechanism.
Do you do it for other people?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Especially if what's interesting is I would find myself defending somebody else and I would know I was defending them using my rationalization.
Yeah.
And that can be one of those kind of things. And of course, remember that the 7 is one of the fastest thinkers on the wheel. So when something painful happens or a bad experience happens, and maybe even a 7 caused, they've reframed that out.
Right.
And now they've reframed out the real painful thing that happened. And now they're giving you a rationalization of why it happened. So they don't have to feel it.
Yeah.
Experience it.
Does that work?
In the long run, no. What ends up happening, right, is it just prolongs it until you don't have a healthy way of dealing with it. So I think I used to tell you this, right? I'd go to a meeting and get my feelings hurt or whatever, and I wouldn't realize it. I'd reframe out the pain, and it was like 3 days later, I've rationalized all the things that have happened in the meeting, which I was able to do probably right in the meeting.
Yeah.
And then 3 days later, I go, oh man, I think my feelings got hurt, and it's too late.
Well,
it feels, the two here, we always like, it's never too late to do feelings. But it feels like the moment has passed. And now I'm just dredging up something from the past.
Right. That is painful for you and going to cause pain potentially for other people.
Yeah, it's easier to just think and avoid, move on to the next thing. So, yeah. So, and we do that on all kinds of fun ways and logical ways and all of those kinds of things. So it's not just the 7 is avoiding or rationalizing by throwing a party, which is what the memes would say. But what really typically is happening is they're rationalizing and doing this work by unconsciously doing some other activity or learning something new. Right. And keeping in mind the fear of limitation is very big for the 7.
Like other people placing limits or?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So even we've seen this in me, even in the last few months, right? That it's like, as a potential job started to come in, job offers started to come in, I wanted to take them all. I didn't want to experience the limitation of not being able to do any of them or having any of them taken away. So I just said yes to all of them, which is crazy town. Right? And you watched it.
Yep.
And there's only a couple of numbers that could keep up with what I was capable of doing for as long as I was capable of doing it either. Like and some would look at that as admirable, but really it was just a way of, I'm trying to find the word. It was probably a way of distraction, but it wasn't a distraction from the pain of what I had left. It was a fear of the limitation.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
If I had said no to some of those options. And now I am starting to figure out, okay, what do I really want?
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, and the other thing I just want to go back to when you were saying it feels too late to do the emotions later. But I think with all the defense mechanisms, it probably will feel too late. Like for everyone. It feels
like the moment is past.
Yeah.
Yes.
So like I repress it in the moment. I do the thing. I'm helpful, but I'm angry or I denied myself. Yeah. Like I didn't do something for myself. I didn't take care of myself. Instead, I did something else for someone else. Yeah. Then who am I mad at? Myself. But I'm not going to realize it in the moment. Yeah. I maybe, if I'm paying attention, know I'm going to repress something. Yeah.
See, anger for a 7 is painful. So I let it go. I actually can let it go faster than you'd think.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, because it's a negative emotion I don't like.
Yeah, I don't like it either. I'm just not going to do it. Going to pretend that's not there. That doesn't work in the long run.
Yeah, you're right.
So what I'm saying.
For any of these.
For any of them. Yeah. Like all of it applies because if we're going to actually grow, we're probably not going to see it in the moment. Like we're not always going to, hopefully the time between gets shorter.
Yeah. And I think that this is one of those kind of helpful moments. Like, so when we go, okay, why do all these things matter? Well, it matters because this is a part of making the unconscious things you do conscious. As you practice doing that, hopefully the gap, our listeners can't see, but hopefully the gap in time between the moment you've used that mechanism or that pattern and the time that you realized it gets smaller and smaller and smaller until you're catching it in the moment. It's partly why we need community in our lives. You know, we don't think community is that important, but it is the place where you practice these things and it is the place where you heal. I don't think you can heal alone. Yeah.
I think you're right. And I think when you were talking about too, like you need people around you to ask good questions like, hey, what are you avoiding?
Yep.
Like, what's that about there? Or you know me well enough to be like, hey, like you don't have to meet my need here.
Yeah.
Like, that's okay. Yeah. We're still good. Like, you know what things to say to actually even help comfort people so they can be their authentic selves.
But it really does come down to, can you identify what you do in your pattern, what your pattern is? If it's, I'm going to rationalize this, or I'm going to, whatever, because some of it is based a little bit on instincts, and some of those things too are playing out. So if you are listening today and you heard your type and you heard now what your defensive pattern is, now you look back and you go, how have I done that? Are there even recent memories of places where I was using my defensive pattern to protect myself?
Yeah.
And did I really need protecting? Hey, this has been fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of wish we had more time.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden, but we don't.
Yeah. It's time to wrap it up.
Call here in like a couple of minutes.
Oh, so. Yeah.
Super fun. Always love talking about the Enneagram with you.
Yeah.
We should do this more.
I think so.
I think so. Maybe we need some other people in the room to talk to too about this.
That would be fun.
Yeah. We can spring what's your defensive pattern? See if they know.
That's awesome.
Hey, thanks so much for listening.
Hey, thanks for joining us. We'd love if you take a moment to rate, subscribe, and review the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Again, thanks for listening.